The quiet hum of Olivia Cartern's luxury sedan was the only sound she could hear, until the sudden wail of sirens pierced the night air. Her heart sank. Here we go again. She had seen the flashing lights in her mirror for the last 3 blocks, tailing her too closely, weaving between cars just to stay on her bumper. She had hoped, maybe just this once, that it wasn't what she thought. But it always was. Taking a slow, steady breath, Olivia signaled and pulled over to the side of the road. The street was dimly lit, the nearest street lamp flickering weakly. A bad place to stop. A worse place to be stopped. Her fingers tapped lightly on the wheel as she glanced around. No pedestrians. No witnesses, except for the glowing screen of her dashboard camera. She reached forward and subtly hit record. Better safe than sorry. Seconds later, the cop car screeched to a halt behind her, and the driver's side door slammed shut with a force that made Olivia flinch. She adjusted her mirror, watching as a tall, broad-shouldered officer in a too perfectly pressed uniform approached with purpose. The type of walk that said he had already decided how this would go. Officer Luke Mercer. The name was stitched into the badge gleaming under the flickering streetlight. But Olivia didn't need to see the name to know exactly who he was. She had dealt with men like him before. Mercer stopped just short of her window, one hand resting lightly on his belt, the other tapping against the holster of his gun. A warning. A flex. Olivia inhaled deeply, forcing herself to stay calm. She kept both hands on the wheel as she rolled down the window. Mercer leaned down, peering into her car. His lip curled slightly. License and registration, he ordered, skipping any form of greeting. No good evening. No. Just authority laced with impatience. Olivia raised an eyebrow. Would you mind telling me why I was pulled over? Mercer's smirk widened. He leaned in just a little closer, his presence creeping into her personal space. You were swerving. A lie. A blatant, sloppy, too confident lie. Her grip on the wheel tightened. She hadn't even touched the lane markers. She knew it. He knew it. But that didn't matter, did it? Mercer wasn't here because of her driving. He was here because of her skin color. Because she was a black woman in a luxury car in the wrong part of town. Because he wanted to remind her that, in his world, she didn't belong. Olivia's jaw clenched, but her face remained carefully composed. My license is in my purse. My registration is in my glove compartment. I'll reach for them now. Mercer's hand twitched over his gun. He tilted his head, considering something. Then, after a moment, he nodded. Go ahead. But his voice was low and clipped, and his posture screamed, one wrong move, and I'll make you regret it. Olivia moved deliberately, no sudden movements, keeping one eye on Mercer as she retrieved her documents. She handed them over. Mercer took them with slow fingers, eyes flicking from her ID to her face. And then, his expression shifted. Just a flicker. Barely noticeable. But Olivia caught it. It was recognition. And maybe even unease. Mercer's grip on her license tightened. Olivia watched, silent, as the wheels turned in his head. He was putting the pieces together. The name. The high-profile last name. Something was off about this stop. And for the first time since he pulled her over, Mercer hesitated. But the moment passed quickly. Too quickly. Because rather than backing off, rather than playing it safe, Mercer doubled down. His smirk returned, colder now. More dangerous. And without a single word, he reached for her door handle. Locked. Mercer's face darkened. His jaw tightened as he straightened up, squaring his shoulders. Step out of the vehicle, he ordered. Olivia stayed perfectly still. On what grounds? Mercer's eyes glinted with something ugly. Suspicious behavior. Her stomach clenched. That phrase. A blank check for abuse of power. She had done everything right. And still, it wasn't enough. Mercer wasn't letting this go. And then, his hand went to his gun. In that moment, Olivia knew. This wasn't just another bad traffic stop. This was about to become something much worse. For a moment, there was nothing but silence. Thick. Heavy. Suffocating. The kind of silence that comes right before a storm. Olivia Cartern sat frozen in her seat, her breath steady but measured. Every fiber of her being told her not to move. Not with the way Officer Luke Mercer's hand hovered over his gun. Not with the way his eyes darkened, his jaw clenched just enough to tell her he was fighting the urge to escalate. It was a delicate balance. A tightrope stretched between control and disaster. And Mercer was looking for a reason, any reason, to tip it over. "Step out of the vehicle," he ordered again, this time slower, firmer. Like he was daring her to refuse. Olivia held his gaze, her fingers tightening around the steering wheel. "I need you to tell me why." Her voice was even, controlled. "You said I was swerving, which is a traffic violation, not an arrestable offense. Now you're escalating to forceful removal. That doesn't add up, Officer Mercer." His nostrils flared. He wasn't used to being questioned. He wasn't used to people like her knowing their rights. A muscle in his jaw twitched as he took a step back, but his hand didn't leave his weapon. "I gave you an order." His voice was clipped, laced with a barely contained impatience. "You refusing to comply?" Olivia felt the weight of the situation pressing down on her. She could comply. She could step out of the car. But she had seen too many stories, too many names turned into hashtags, too many routine stops ending with a tragic, hollow statement, "We are investigating the incident." No. She wasn't stepping out of this car unless there was a legitimate reason. "Officer," Olivia said, carefully, deliberately, "I'm not resisting. But I need clarity. Am I being detained?" A flicker of something unreadable crossed Mercer's face. Then, his lips curled into a slow, mocking smirk. "You sure ask a lot of questions for someone in your position." Her position. The words were laced with an unspoken message. "You're at my mercy. You don't get to argue. You don't get to question me." Olivia forced herself to stay calm, but inside, rage burned. Because she knew, deep down, this wasn't about a traffic stop. This was about power. And he wanted to remind her who had it. Then, he did it. His fingers curled around the grip of his gun. Not fully drawn. Not yet. But unclipped from his holster. Exposed. Visible. A warning. A threat. It was in that moment that Olivia felt it, the shift. The change in the air. The unspoken knowledge that the next few seconds would decide everything. A bad move here, and she could be another headline. And then, another voice cut through the tension. "Put your damn weapon away, Mercer." The words were sharp, commanding. A voice filled with authority. A voice that made Mercer freeze. Olivia turned her head just slightly, catching movement from her side mirror. Another officer. No, not just another officer. A superior. Captain Ryan Dorsey. A man she didn't know personally, but one who had just become the most important person on this street. His expression was unreadable, but his stance was clear. This had gone too far. Olivia exhaled slowly. Mercer hesitated for a second longer before his jaw clenched, and with clear reluctance, he let his hand drop from his weapon. Dorsey stepped forward, his eyes locking onto Mercer's. Cold. Unforgiving. "Are you out of your damn mind?" he hissed under his breath, just loud enough for Olivia to hear. "Do you have any clue who you're pointing a gun at?" Mercer's smirk wavered. His fingers twitched, and for the first time, there it was. Doubt. Uncertainty. The first crack in his unwavering arrogance. Because he had assumed Olivia was just another civilian. Just another black woman in a nice car. Just another nobody he could intimidate. But now, reality was creeping in. Now, he was realizing his mistake. And it was too late. Captain Dorsey turned toward Olivia, his posture shifting slightly. "Are you all right?" She studied his face. Measured. Guarded. He was cleaning up the mess, but whether that was out of genuine concern or damage control, she wasn't sure. Still, she nodded once. "I'm fine. But I would like to know why I was stopped." Dorsey's expression hardened, and he slowly turned back to Mercer. "Good question." Mercer was silent. Tense. For the first time since this encounter began, he didn't have the upper hand. Dorsey didn't wait for an answer. Instead, he reached for Olivia's license, which was still clenched in Mercer's hand. He snatched it away, scanned it, then went completely still. His eyes flicked to Mercer. Then back to Olivia. And that's when everything truly changed. Because Dorsey's expression shifted from controlled to utterly unreadable. The realization hit like a freight train. The name on that license. Olivia Carter Owens. As in the wife of FBI Director James Owens. A man who could, with a single phone call, end careers. Dorsey inhaled sharply, his grip tightening on her license before he carefully handed it back to her. He said, and this time, his tone had changed. I sincerely apologize for the misunderstanding. You're free to go. Misunderstanding. A neat little bow on a near-deadly encounter. But Olivia wasn't going to let it slide that easily. She reached toward her dashboard, tapping the screen. The small red light in the corner blinked back at her. Recording complete. She turned back to Mercer, her voice steady. You were about to pull your gun on the wife of an FBI director for no reason. I'd be very interested to see how your department explains that. Mercer's face drained of color. Dorsey turned to him sharply. You had your body cam on, right, Mercer? Silence. Then, Mercer swallowed hard. It was malfunctioning. Dorsey's jaw clenched. He already knew what that meant. Get in the car, Dorsey snapped at him. Now. Mercer hesitated. He opened his mouth, as if to argue. Then stopped. He knew. He was done. And with one last glance at Olivia, he turned stiffly on his heel and walked back to his cruiser. Dorsey lingered for a second before nodding at Olivia. Have a good night. She didn't respond. She just watched as they pulled away, Mercer's face pale and rigid in the passenger seat. And when they disappeared into the distance, she finally let out the breath she had been holding. The moment had passed. But the damage had been done. And she knew this wasn't over. By the time Olivia walked through her front door, something inside her told her that this wasn't over. The tension from the night's events still clung to her like a second skin, refusing to let go. She tossed her keys onto the entryway table and sank onto the couch, exhaling sharply. Her phone vibrated against the wooden surface. Once. Twice. Then again. A steady stream of notifications that wouldn't stop. She hesitated, then reached for it. The screen was flooded. 58 missed calls. 107 new messages. Your video has been uploaded. That last notification made her freeze. Her car's dash cam had automatically uploaded the footage the moment she pulled into the driveway. She had set it up that way years ago as a precaution. And now, the whole world had access to what happened on that dark road. Olivia's pulse quickened as she tapped on the link. The video was already everywhere. It wasn't just a small clip circulating among a few outraged citizens. This was national. The biggest news outlets had already picked it up. The headlines were damning. Racist cop pulls gun on FBI director's wife, instantly regrets it. Body cam malfunctioned? Yeah, right. Another cop caught in a lie. Career over? Officer Luke Mercer under fire after threatening FBI director's wife. Every social media platform was ablaze with commentary. The footage had been dissected, analyzed, slowed down, enhanced. Millions had already seen the way Mercer's hand hovered over his weapon, the smirk on his face when he thought he had the power, and the way that power shattered the moment Captain Dorsey realized exactly who he had stopped. People were demanding answers. People were demanding justice. And then, Olivia noticed something strange. She scrolled through the endless flood of comments, reactions, and news reports, and one question kept appearing over and over again. Where is Officer Luke Mercer? At first, she didn't think much of it. Maybe he had been placed on immediate leave. Maybe he was being hidden away while the department figured out their next move. But then, she saw the deeper concern. Mercer wasn't just suspended. He was gone. Not just from the precinct. Not just from duty. From everywhere. His personal social media pages? Deleted. His phone? Disconnected. His home? Empty. No press conference. No statement. No apology tour. It was as if Luke Mercer had simply vanished. A cold unease crawled up Olivia's spine. This wasn't normal. Police departments didn't just make officers disappear, not unless there was something they were hiding. Her thoughts raced, searching for an explanation, when suddenly, her phone vibrated again. A new message. From an unknown number. Olivia hesitated, her thumb hovering over the screen. Then, she tapped it open. Unknown. You need to stop looking into Mercer. This is bigger than you think. Her breath caught in her throat. What the hell did that mean? She stared at the message, heart pounding in her chest. And then, the power cut out. Her entire house plunged into darkness. The TV screen flickered and died. The hum of the refrigerator ceased. Even the street lights outside seemed to dim, as if the entire block had been swallowed by the night. Olivia's fingers tightened around her phone. Then, a knock at the door. Slow. Deliberate. Not frantic. Not impatient. Whoever it was, wasn't in a hurry. They wanted her to know they were there. A chill ran down Olivia's spine as she carefully placed her phone down, every muscle in her body tensing. She had been in high-stakes situations before. She had seen danger up close. But this was different. Because right now, standing in her darkened home, her instincts told her one thing. She wasn't alone. And whatever had started on that road tonight was only the beginning. The knock came again. Slow. Measured. A deliberate reminder that someone was waiting. Olivia didn't move. Her breath was steady, but her mind was racing. Whoever was outside wasn't a random visitor. Not at this hour. Not after everything that had just happened. Her fingers tightened around the edge of her couch. Then, cautiously, she reached for her phone, the only light source in the darkened room. No service. Her heart pounded. No Wi-Fi. No cellular connection. The power outage wasn't just a coincidence, it was calculated. Whoever had sent that message didn't just want to warn her. They wanted to control what happened next. Another knock. She forced herself to move, rising slowly from the couch, her bare feet silent against the hardwood floor. Her mind catalogued every possible weapon in reach, a lamp, a fire poker near the fireplace, even the heavy glass vase on the table. Then, movement. A shadow passed beneath the doorframe. Not alone. There were at least two of them. A deep breath. She took one step toward the door, then another, her hand hovering near the deadbolt. And then, bang. Not a knock. A fist slamming against the wood. Olivia Carterins. We know you're inside. Open the door. The voice was calm. Too calm. And Olivia knew then, this wasn't just about Mercer. This wasn't just about a bad cop making a bad decision. This was about something bigger. A larger game being played behind the scenes. And now, she was in the center of it. She didn't answer. Instead, she moved toward the back of the house, keeping low, staying in the shadows. Her mind was sharp now, methodical. Years of being married to a high-ranking federal official had taught her one thing: when you don't know who's at your door, you don't open it. Instead, you find an escape. She reached the back hallway just as she heard the telltale sound of a lockpick sliding into place. They weren't waiting for permission. They were coming in. A spike of adrenaline shot through her veins as she darted into the kitchen, grabbing a carving knife from the block. She pressed herself against the wall, controlling her breathing, listening. Click. The door creaked open. Boots against hardwood. Two sets of footsteps. One heavier, deliberate. The other lighter, careful. Trained. These weren't just men sent to scare her. They were professionals. A new kind of fear settled into Olivia's bones. This wasn't intimidation. This was a cleanup. She had been deemed a problem. And they were here to fix it. But then, a sound from outside. Tires screeching. A car pulling up fast. Then, a voice. Loud. Commanding. Step away from the house. Now. The intruders hesitated. A beat of silence. Then, movement. They were retreating. Within seconds, the front door slammed shut again, and their footsteps pounded down the steps. Olivia rushed to the window, heart hammering. A black SUV had stopped in front of her house. A man in a dark suit stood by the open driver's side door, one hand resting on his holster. Her phone buzzed in her hand. A single text message. Get in the car. Now. No name. No explanation. But Olivia didn't hesitate. She grabbed her keys, bolted for the door, and ran straight for the SUV. The moment she climbed in, the locks engaged, and the driver hit the gas. Her chest was heaving, adrenaline still coursing through her system as she turned toward the man in the driver's seat. "You're welcome," he said, glancing at her through the rearview mirror. She narrowed her eyes. "Who the hell are you?" He smirked. "Someone who just saved your life." Olivia clenched her fists. "Start talking. Now." The man exhaled sharply, as if deciding how much to tell her. Then, finally, "Your little video didn't just expose a dirty cop," he said. "It exposed something much bigger. Something you don't even realize you stepped into." He took another sharp turn, speeding away from her home, away from the danger she had barely escaped. She had thought Luke Mercer was the problem. But now, she realized, he was just the beginning. And whatever she had uncovered, people were willing to kill to keep it buried. The black SUV tore through the streets, its tires screeching as the driver took sharp turns, weaving in and out of traffic. Olivia kept her eyes locked on the man behind the wheel, her pulse still pounding from the near invasion of her home. "Are you going to tell me who you are, or do I have to guess?" she asked, voice tight. The man glanced at her through the rearview mirror. "Names don't matter right now. Keeping you alive does." "That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting." Olivia clenched her fists, resisting the urge to press him further. She wasn't used to being left in the dark. But right now, she had no choice but to follow his lead, at least until she figured out what the hell was really going on. The city lights blurred as they sped toward the outskirts of town. The streets became quieter, the buildings sparser. Finally, after nearly 20 minutes of tense silence, the SUV pulled into an underground parking garage beneath an unmarked office building. The driver killed the engine and turned to face her. "You need to see something." He pushed open his door, motioning for her to follow. Olivia hesitated, her instincts screaming at her to be cautious. But at this point, she was in too deep to back out now. She stepped out of the car, her heels clicking against the concrete floor, and followed the man to a security door. He punched in a code, and the lock released with a soft beep. Inside was a dimly lit surveillance room. Screens lined the walls, each one displaying various camera feeds, city streets, government buildings, even police precincts. But what caught Olivia's attention wasn't the surveillance itself. It was the image on the main screen. A still frame of Luke Mercer. But he didn't look like the smug, arrogant cop from the traffic stop. He looked terrified. Olivia stepped closer. "Where is this?" "That's a safe house," the man said. "Mercer's in protective custody." Her brow furrowed. "Protective custody? Why? I thought he disappeared." "He did," the man said. "Because he ran." "Ran from who?" The man exhaled, rubbing a hand down his face. "Mercer was dirty, no doubt about that. But the moment he realized who you were, he panicked. Not because of your husband. Because of what your video would uncover." Olivia's stomach tightened. "And what exactly did my video uncover?" The man tapped the keyboard, bringing up another image. A list of names. Some of them were familiar, high-ranking police officials, state representatives, even a judge. Others she didn't recognize. "Mercer wasn't working alone," the man said. "There's an entire network operating behind the scenes. A system built to protect officers like him. To bury misconduct, erase body cam footage, suppress investigations before they even start." Olivia scanned the list, her breath growing unsteady. "And they were protecting Mercer?" "They were. Until he became a liability. The moment your video went viral, he stopped being useful to them." A sick feeling twisted in Olivia's gut. "So they got rid of him?" The man nodded. "Or at least, they tried to." Olivia turned back to the screen, watching Mercer's frantic movements. He was pacing, looking over his shoulder every few seconds like a man who knew death was coming for him. "He reached out to us," the man continued. "Said he had information. Evidence that could take down the entire operation. But he didn't trust the police. He knew they'd kill him before he ever got the chance to testify." Olivia crossed her arms. "And you expect me to feel sorry for him?" The man shook his head. No. But I expect you to understand that he's the only reason we have a chance to take these people down. Olivia's jaw tightened. She had spent the past 24 hours reliving the moment Mercer had nearly pulled his weapon on her. Seeing his face filled her with rage. But now, she was looking at something different. A man who had finally realized he was disposable. Where do I fit into this? She asked. The man's gaze sharpened. Your video did more than expose Mercer. It cracked open the door to something much bigger. The people on that list? They've been untouchable for years. And now, for the first time, they are afraid. He turned to face her fully. They want you silenced, Olivia. Because if you keep pushing, if you keep talking, this whole thing collapses. A cold chill ran through her. She had thought this was about one cop. One night. But now, she saw the truth. This was about an entire system. One designed to protect itself at all costs. And she had just become its biggest threat. A sudden buzz cut through the tension. The man pulled out his phone, checked the screen, then stiffened. They found him. He turned back to the monitors just in time for Olivia to see it. A black van pulling up outside the safe house. Men stepping out. Guns drawn. Mercer's face went white as he realized what was happening. Then, the screen cut to black. Shit! The man cursed, slamming his fist against the desk. Olivia swallowed hard. They killed him, didn't they? He didn't answer. But he didn't have to. The silence was enough. Mercer was dead. And the people who wanted him silenced would come for her next. She exhaled sharply, trying to steady herself. So what now? She asked. The man turned to her, his expression unreadable. Now, he said. We finish what you started. Olivia met his gaze, the weight of everything pressing down on her. A part of her wanted to run. To disappear. But she knew she couldn't. This wasn't just about her anymore. This was about every person who had ever been silenced. Every victim who never got justice. Every name that had been buried under false reports and accidental body cam failures. And if she walked away now, she'd be letting them win. Olivia straightened her shoulders, her resolve hardening. Then let's bring them down. The man smirked. Now you're talking. He turned back to the monitors, already in motion, already preparing for what came next. And Olivia? She knew the fight ahead wouldn't be easy. But one thing was certain. They had tried to silence her. They had tried to scare her. But they had made a mistake. Because now, she wasn't just fighting back. She was coming for them. And this time? She wasn't stopping until it was over. And just like that, everything Olivia thought she knew was turned upside down. A simple traffic stop? No. This was something much bigger, and now, she's in the middle of it. But the question is, who's really pulling the strings? If you think this story is over, think again. Part 2 is coming soon, and trust me, you won't believe what happens next. So if you haven't already, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss what happens next. Because the truth? It's just getting started.